Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time you're listening to this. Um, Thank you so much for signing up for the Bloom. Quite an interesting phase of life. If you think about the bloom from the point of a flower, it's a very beautiful moment. A moment when the flower blossoms and it's all beautiful in its color, is very attractive, and that's the time when it basically attracts everything. It could be attracting the birds, it could be attracting insects, it could be attracting human beings, because anybody who walks onto or into a garden will feel attracted to the color, to the scent, the type, and the nature of petals that they see on the flower. It's a very, very attractive type. What many, particularly people, may forget is that that is not the end of that plant, but the flower in itself, at that time when it's really blooming, that represents a very delicate point. Because yes, anybody would want to pluck that flower, but sometimes we just not have to think of the consequences of such an action. And that's the reality of a blooming stage. A stage which is very attractive, a stage which basically all seems to be well, yet it's the most delicate time. Welcome to the bloom. The bloom is part of the three-part series of our flowering programs. And this middle point is a moment for young adults. You've stepped out of teenage years, and at the bloom phase, it coincides with maybe a number of things. But most importantly, it is that time when there's formal recognition of adulthood. And that's also the time when you're transiting from basic education, which is basically secondary school, to go to higher education. And therefore, it's an important formation stage where you're beginning to figure out what the career would look like. So, bloom stage coincides with the time when most of the students or most of the young adults are particularly in college. So, they are figuring out so many things about their lives. And there's some beautiful naivety or innocence that comes with the bloom, in the sense that it's a world of possibilities. You know, you just got your ID, so you're super excited and you're happy. And I really want to congratulate you for just reaching that stage. You know, it means a lot that you've been able to cut through all these kind of challenges, the challenges of teenage, when perhaps there was a lot of restriction, there's also not a lot of clarity, there's a lot of pressure that comes, especially in the African context where secondary school can be quite demanding. So you had a lot to do, but now you're in college. And college in itself may be as demanding as high school was, or not necessarily as high school was. But that's also the time when you also get to have real tests of the real issues. That's the time when you get to get tested around money. Freedom is in the air. Maybe, maybe not. Some people will be operating from home with certain restrictions, but definitely there's a certain level of independence and a certain level of freedom that comes with being in college, and that's the bloom stage. And with such, you're also expanding your horizon in terms of the people that you are interacting with. And you may realize that your parents, or rather significant adults, also now begin to treat you a bit differently. The kind of sanctions that you had in the previous years now begin to change. What is most interesting is the fact that your life is changing and so much is happening around you. And the most interesting part is that you just don't know how what is around you is affecting your life. And it just doesn't affect you in one way, it affects you in very, very many different ways. And as you interact with someone, what happens? You act on them, they act on you. That becomes an interaction, and vice versa. They act on you, you act on them, and that becomes an interaction. There's a testing phase in the sense that what you understood vis-a-vis what is now presented to you are very different things. And so you find a real clash. Sometimes it's hard, sometimes it's very, very subtle. You just don't know exactly how it's happening. And sometimes you just look at an old photo and you ask yourself, what was happening at this time? What exactly happened? You may not necessarily even tell. So the reality is that at a bloom stage, so much is happening and changing around you without you necessarily even determining how it's going to happen. The other reality that you face is that whatever happens in your life at this point in time is going to have consequences. Now, some of these consequences, what is very interesting is the fact that you cannot determine the nature of the consequences and how long the consequences are going to be with you. So you may engage in something, both positive or negative, because again, that becomes not something that is very straightforward. You can't say this is wrong and this is right. This is the real time when you get even to begin defining on your own what is right and what is wrong. What do you allow and what do you not allow? But the consequences of every decision that you make during the bloom stage cannot be determined in the length of I'll stay for this period of time with the consequences or I'll not stay with this period of time for the consequences. You don't tell for how long you will enjoy or suffer the consequences of the decisions that you're making. So as you arrive in college, when somebody looks at you on the surface, they see a human being. They see a man or they see a woman. But there's pretty a lot that makes you who you are. There's a whole formation around determining what things you want to consider to be right or wrong. This is the time when you begin now solidifying and forming what you may call your principles in life. Because when freedom is presented, some level of resources are presented, and certain boundaries are crossed, that's now when you get now to test what is consistent and what is not consistent. So those principles are very important, and we will be referring to them as your personal value system, because that's what is going to be guiding you in terms of making decisions. What is most interesting is that some things you pick them up while in college and they are going to live with you for a very long time. Just as I mentioned, the consequences of what we do may live with us for a very long time, or not necessarily for a very long time. So personal value system is very important in the sense that we just don't know how long you're going to stay with the consequences of decisions that you make. There are going to be lots of decisions around your career. Some of us reach perhaps college, we shift from what we thought vis-a-vis to something else. And as you begin digging deeper into the career, you begin to realize that maybe certain things are not what you thought, maybe certain things are what you thought. Maybe a career that you had dreamed of so much in your teenage years, or even at that moment when you are super innocent at age 10, when you are turning to the new decade, they are turning out to be quite different. You thought perhaps medicine was your passion, but then you realize maybe you are in it because you passed exams, but maybe you have a deeper calling to do journalism or just to tell stories. And then now there's a dead end. How did you choose the career that you've chosen? And so you begin asking yourself some of these questions. What do you really want to do? Where do you basically want to work? Do you want to walk into the space of self-employment, or do you just want to go maybe back to school, or maybe look for some sense of employment? Is this what you'll do into fulfillment? Because remember, as a career, you're going to stay in it for a very long time. So sometimes you may also be very competent. Okay, you have the ability to undertake on a certain career, but maybe that's not what you like. Or maybe you really like something, but you just don't have what it takes for you to do it. So these are tensions that are happening around your life at this point in time. That is not enough. You've also arrived in college with a certain spiritual formation. It's been given to you. And much of it is what your parents have deposited you, and also sometimes even what school and the society around you, what it has presented. And so there's a big clash between what you thought religion to be and now who you are becoming. So you're also beginning to question certain things. As you meet people from different backgrounds and you interact with a lot more people, you begin questioning that which you saw vis-a-vis what you are told. So it's very, very normal. And it's okay for you to feel these kind of disruptions, because the young adulthood is all about disruptions. So you're constantly going to be motion of having this form of disruption. Is this really what is mine, or this is what was given to me? Did I inherit it, or do I actually own it as a person? So that active engagement process with yourself is quite healthy, is quite important. And so it's not coming as a surprise that you have a lot of sleepless nights, or certain moments when you just feel alone and you see inconsistency between what you arrived in college thinking vis-a-vis now what you're experiencing while in college. So career questions are there, spiritual questions are there, principles or what you call value systems are there. There's a question of the social networks. Human beings are wired to be social beings. And so one of the things that people totally disown is loneliness. There's no one who finds pride and joy in loneliness. So you want to associate. But then how do you decide those who should be around you? How do you want to decide how you come through for others and how particularly you also want others to come through for you? How do you want to be known? You want to be referred to as who? These are questions that will keep on, disturbing you and disrupting you. And it's very much okay because now as you settle into college, you have quite many more people than you thought. And so you naturally begin to emerge. People will label you or not necessarily label you because based on the information they have about you or the information that they don't have about you, they'll begin making certain conclusions about you. And you also draw certain conclusions about them. So the social interactions are going to be very critical. And this is now where you'll find yourself in certain spaces and certain social groups will be selected for you. For instance, the program that you're doing, you have no choice. Even the college, probably you didn't even have much choice. So you can't even choose your classmates. They'll be readily available for you. Maybe you're allocated a hostel. You have no choice. But there are also spaces which you'll also choose for yourself. There are clubs, societies, associations that you'll begin associating yourself with as you begin finding out who you are. And it's very, very important that you broaden that thinking so that even as you make those decisions around where do you want to be associated with, form of associations, clubs, societies, groups, it's very, very important that you begin making a conscious decision in a sense that it is also bolstering your career choices, your personal principles, and even your spiritual formation. And what is most important that all these four that I've already mentioned, they have a way in which they end up to influence each other. They are not totally independent. Your spiritual formation may alter how you think about other people, and other people may alter therefore how you think about religion, including your own personal principles. So there is absolutely nothing wrong around you knowing that these factors are at interplay. So that it's not just about emotions, how you're feeling in the moment, but you're really able to reflect a little bit on what is it that you're bringing through into these relationships, what is it that you're bringing into a religious orientation and such. Now, that's not just the case. Most importantly is also to understand that you've come from a family, and this family is very critical in your life. And whether you look at it from the essence of your nuclear family, your parents, your siblings, or even the extended family members, how you related with them is very critical because now at college time, the realities of the fractures within family begin to affect you. And as you begin also to experience romantic relationships, the reality of failed adult relationships now begin to weigh heavily on you. And most of the time, you find yourself a little bit uncomfortable, even opening up, because the reality of how relationships break begin dawning on you. And as it dawns on you, you realize the weight of it. And it's very important that even during college time, you have a moment to reflect a little bit, even on the relationship between your most significant adults. They could be your parents or people who raised you up. You begin to see the reality of how relationships are not necessarily linear. Because you arrive in that stage of adulthood, you're like, I can't wait to be 18, I can't wait to be 19 to get into my first relationship. No one will be asking me questions. Hey, if I had a relationship in my teenage years, it's a bit different from now when I'm having a relationship when I have my ID because I can now make my own decisions. But now you begin to realize how it's not as easy as you thought. And so who do you turn to? So it's always important that you also spend a bit of time to understand. And in most cases, you realize that the family you came from is playing a big role in terms of influencing how you make decisions around relationships. And sometimes you may be replaying what you saw in your family, or sometimes you may just find yourself trying to avoid completely what you saw in your family. It's very important that whether you are a boy or whether you are a girl, but I know that you're not boys and girls, but you're now gentlemen and ladies. So, looking back at your relationship between your parents, how easy or how hard was it? And so, adulthood is also a moment to invite you to have a conscious conversation with your parents in terms of understanding what exactly did it take? Because that is a template that you'll keep on replaying. You're never going to run away from it. It's how you've seen it, how you've seen your parents relate with money, how you've seen emotions run within your family, how you've seen them shape up the spiritual formation in your life. And so during college years, you'll see a lot of this now playing out. It will now be expressing itself. It will no longer now just be about receiving, but you'll have that tension between what you grew up seeing or experiencing vis-a-vis now what you feel that you have a conviction that you want to do. So it's always important that you kind of find an end to that. And the very, very last thing that you're going to face as attention is attention around resources and particularly money. Because as you reach college, you're also now beginning to form certain habits around money. What do you do with the resources that you receive? What is your understanding of expenditure? What is your understanding of budgets? What is the understanding of savings? What is the understanding of how you can make money? You can live within certain means or not. How can you make money or how can you not make money? These are critical questions that you're going to face while in college because you no longer now have the protective arm of your parents as well as adults or probably the significant adults. But now is a moment for you to test your understanding and ability around financial decisions. What I need to tell you is that if you don't pick certain habits in that adult, in that young adulthood, or if you don't question certain habits that you acquired in your teenage years, it will be very difficult for you to perhaps alter them. Because when habits develop, they take time and they develop, it will be very difficult for you to break those habits. So you need really to understand what does money mean, your relationship with anxiety around money, how do you take it? So that even while you're in college, you are effectively making decisions. You're not just kind of like you're going to completely deny yourself everything, but at the same time, you're also not just going to spend money as if money is infinite. You have to begin understanding that money is scarce, but at the same time, money is earned. And for what purposes is money earned? What is your relationship with that money? Which sources are legitimate and which ones are not legitimate? Can you plan for the resources? Your parents will not be there to tell you that this is how you need to eat from Monday to Friday. So it means that you just already to begin thinking around, I have 2,000 shillings. I need to take me through a whole month. What will it mean? And so are you consciously looking for building your capacities around use of the resources that you have, or will it still turn out to be such a big challenge? So these are the 6 critical decisions upon which we've actually assessed you. And when we are assessing you, we're trying to look at to what extent college experiences are disrupting that which you arrived with. Because it's always important that we observe that you can't really come to college and these 6 things are not disrupted. They just have to be disrupted. Your personal value system, your family, your spiritual life, your career, your social life, as well as your financial life. Those 6 critical areas of life, they must be disrupted. And so as we look at you as a young adult, we're interested in looking at to what extent are these disruptions actively working on you. There are people who are managing the disruption, that even with the disruptions coming, they are enjoying the moment of the disruptions and making the best out of it. And that's actually what we're interested in for your level as a student, that you can't be running away from this disruption. They need to be there. You can't just be telling people when they come to like, I don't want a relationship. No, you must actively engage with it. As a young person, there's nothing wrong around that. It's important that for you to question the spiritual formation that you arrived with. So it's important for you to interact with people of also different faith. You don't just have to say that because I arrived here as a Catholic, I'm a Muslim, I'm an atheist, therefore I cannot engage with Christians, or it's a no-go zone. You can basically put a wall. You can put boundaries. And we'll be discussing a lot around walls and boundaries in the course of time. But it's important that these disruptions are actually part and parcel of how you're making your identity, or what you're calling identity formation process. So we'll be looking at whether you are actively integrating. Because if you're actively integrating the disruptions into your life, what you arrived with, then you're good. But there could also be people who are struggling to actively integrate. And that is also still fine, because it's very difficult for, in our own context and with everything that is happening around us, to find students who are actively integrating. Or you'll find that you're probably integrating in the spiritual life, but maybe you are struggling to integrate with finances, or maybe you are struggling to integrate with social relationships, or struggling to integrate with the career choices that you've already made. That is pretty fine. We're also seeking to understand, and that's part of now what the program will be doing. It will help you to have a moment to reflect on what is this that you understood and what is this that maybe you don't understand. Where are you having inertia, in the sense that I know what to do, but I'm struggling with what to do? What is really making you to appear indecisive? But at the same time, you also have people who have deliberately decided, or maybe have not deliberately decided. The system has not allowed them to get disrupted. Probably because you put a wall, you just don't want to face this kind of thing. So you are an avoidance, like, I don't just want to think about it. or opportunities have not necessarily presented themselves to disrupt your life. And I know that as I mean, during this technological era, you guys know what you call um, viruses. You know, a virus in the system. You can introduce a virus in the system to test how strong the system is. And the reality of life is that there are a lot of viruses. There will be things that which will really be introduced in your own life, and they really check the immune system of your life. So they not just the immune system of the body, but the immune system of your life. So you need to be very careful in terms of understanding how these viruses come, or even speeding up the rate of reaction, what you call enzymes, is quite necessary. So if we realize that also you haven't had an opportunity to interact with these viruses or these enzymes, that places you a little bit on a lower level, and that's what we'll actually be calling holding. That at that point in time, you've not had an opportunity to interact with the disruptions or have an opportunity to really face off what those disruptions are. Or even if they have come at a huge cost. You basically struggling, and in itself may mean that you're having a very, very difficult time while in college. Why? Because you're finding that maybe you arrived with a spiritual formation, maybe you're a Catholic, but you just don't feel that you're no longer Catholic. Probably you really fell in love with an SDA guy. And so you so debated in your mind, am I a Catholic or am I an SDA? Am I a Muslim or maybe a Christian? And so it's very difficult. Or you arrived with a certain understanding of money. So you thought that I need to be saving. But you realize every time towards the end of the month, you're always running in reds. And so what are you doing? Probably you go to check, maybe you want to do something like betting. It's like, if I do this, I will likely get more. Or maybe you just find yourself spending. Okay, anytime you have money, you never feel comfortable until you spend and reach certain levels. That's now when you become sober. So that is really a moment when you are holding, because you probably know one thing, that I need to save, but there is something else happening typically in your life that makes saving very difficult for you to realize. So that is a third level. And the very, very last level is now what we say collapse. And at collapse level, that means that everything you arrived with in college has collapsed. The principles have collapsed. Your personal life has collapsed. Spiritual formation has collapsed. Understanding of career, even maybe you have even dropped out of college. I mean, everything has basically collapsed. And it doesn't necessarily mean that everything. It could be across any of those pillars that you mentioned. You could be still in class, but your spiritual life has collapsed. You could be in church, but your financial life has collapsed. You could be having finances, but you're struggling with your studies. In fact, you feel like you need to drop out. Because at the end of the day, these six are actually supposed to be going together. So it's very, very important. And so when you go through your report, this is what you'll be interacting with. We'll be giving you a clear status of how we establish where you are. And just by asking you those questions, we're actually able to analyze and make certain conclusions about it. And so we invite you to take time to carefully go through that report so that you understand the areas which you're going to be having gaps. Now, we've placed you on the Bloom program because it's going to be a group formation stage. And we believe that you don't need to go through that journey alone. You're also going to be with other young people who are going to accompany you. And you'll be doing all manner of things together. You'll be doing individual activities. You're also going to be doing group activities. And you're also going to be having a reflection moment once every week. So it's very important that you pay attention to these three things, particularly in that first phase, whereby you've got individual activities every day. Get to do something that is required of you. And some of these things will involve very, very practical things, because we can tell you something. As part of transforming yourself and getting an answer, or getting answers to the big questions around life, nobody can actually talk you through. You don't need a podcast, you don't need a motivational speech, you just have to do certain things in a practical way. So we invite you to make sure that every activity that has been listed in your program, you're actually able to go through it. Every week, you've got a signature activity that will be required of you. Please pay attention to that. And as you come to the reflective session, where you'll have well-trained facilitators to guide you through the process, come with your raw thoughts. We encourage you to be open, but you don't have necessarily to share the truth. There is a whole difference between opening up and also exposing yourself. So we are also only asking that you make sure that you share what you are comfortable in sharing. This is a confidential process. Even your report is very, very personal. Nobody is going to ask you to share personal information. It's very important that you engage with the process in a way that is very, very fulfilling. And if you have got any question, please feel free to reach out to us. Your facilitators who are trained in the process, they'll be guiding you. You've got coordinators who've also gone through the experience. They are at the same level with you in terms of they are also students, or probably they're also young adults like yourself. But a facilitator is someone who has experienced that experience of college, has gone through it, and they are now in a different phase altogether. In your second phase, we are going to ask you to spend some time in your community where you basically grew up. And we're going to ask you to do 23 things. Very, very specific things that are able to help you to slightly reflect on the decisions that you are making right now and what the reality of life is. So we invite you that when the semester is over, go back to where you grew up, because we know when colleges close, you don't close for less than 23 days. So be there and remain diligent, remain honest to the process. Do what is supposed to be done. Engage with every single activity that you have. And when you come back, we'll actually have a passing out activity that enables you just to put everything together, and we will be there to support you. The most interesting part is that as we welcome you into the Life 360 community of the Opticam, it is a journey that we'll be walking together with you. So it's not something that you're walking in and stepping out. These 3 months are basically an induction process to welcome you into our community, where we'll be able to work with you and provide you with every kind of possible experience that you have and any other experience that you might need, because it's very important. You'll be interacting with one of the principles, principle number 5, and it talks about developing a support system, because we know that no one deserves to go through life alone. You don't need to go through life alone. And these are things that we're going to challenge you to understand, that there is nothing about feeling very, very happy to be lonely. There's nothing around that. Great people are made by people by great people who surround them. If you really want to know the quality of a person, all you need to do is to look at the kind of people that they interact with. And we'll be asking you that question. Who are these 5, 6, 7 people who know you intimately, who know you very, very close? Apart from one of your parents, or apart from one of your relatives, apart from one of your friends, do we have people who genuinely know you? And we know that you've asked you that question in the assessment. So as you engage with it, as you sit in this cohort, feel free to share it out. Observe your level of anxiety, and we ask that please pay attention to what has taken you to college. At the end of the day, you need to leave out with that qualification and to come out with that paper, whether it's a diploma, whether it's a degree, whether it's a certificate that you are engaging in. Please pay a lot of attention, so that, again, we are not negating the very, very essence of where we found you. So welcoming you to the journey of the Bloom. We look forward to hosting you for the next 3 months and beyond, and we hope that you'll have fruitful engagements with us. In case you have any suggestion, or in case you have got any question, feel free to reach out to us through your coordinators or through your facilitators. We'll be glad to walk the journey with you. And if you strongly feel that this journey can also benefit another young person somewhere, feel free to reach out to us, so that then we can provide that support to all of you. I wish you well. Enjoy your journey of the Bloom.